Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Brian. Today we're going to go over the Michigan State game, which thankfully Michigan won 31-20. If you missed that game, we'll kind of go over that a little bit. Um, Also, we'll go over how my predictions went for the week, which have proven to be hilariously wrong at times. So, hey, let's have some fun with this. Right off the bat, we'll start off with the Michigan game, and I want to say, hey, it was a great game. Um, while there are some things Michigan does need to work on, we'll go over that. Their defense was primarily in the second half, but showed up in the first half to a certain extent. But in the second half, their defense clamped down. They played Michigan ball. The Michigan defense we're getting used to in the past couple of years, that was back in the second half. They looked great in the second half. So they did. Michigan State did score a garbage time touchdown, which kind of brought the score. I believe I said the score would be something like 31-10. I believe was my prediction. Um, it would have been closer closer if they hadn't scored the final touchdown. It would have been 31-13, but Michigan State did score that one. So my prediction was off, but in terms of the score, but hey, Michigan won, so that's what matters here. Michigan State, Aiden Childs, he looked overwhelmed for a large part of the game. He took a bunch of sacks. He was looking okay towards the beginning, but as the game went on, he just couldn't keep up. Their backup came in. He actually looked half decent, 5 or 6. He threw a touchdown. So, but garbage time, I think, yeah, that's what it is. We all know how, if you're a college football fan, you're seeing these, you understand how garbage time works. So, but Michigan passing, 8 to 17, not great. Uh, only 86 yards. Big plus, long to 27. Bad thing is that takes up most of those yards, or almost a quarter of the yards. So you're looking, that's at what is like 45% completion rate. Not great. So passing definitely needs to improve for sure, big time. However, big one here, no interceptions. Big deal. So I'll take the good with the bad in that. Rushing Michigan State, they had 115 rush yards, not bad, not great, but the good thing on the Michigan side of the ball here is this: 276 total rushing yards. That's amazing. That's great, and that's where Michigan got back to playing Michigan ball right there. It's run into the 3 yards in a cloud of dust, like just hammer the ball. Justice Haynes and Jordan Marshall both had over 100 yards. Justice Haynes had 150 something, 153. That's amazing. That's Michigan football right there. That's why Bryce Underwood's 86 yards passing didn't realistically matter in the bigger picture. That's why I said, not great, but when you have rushing like this, does it matter how much you like last year's? We saw this play out last year a lot of times, unfortunately, with a slightly less talented team, and we still won like 8 games last year. Now, do I think that's a good thing? No, I really don't. But at the same time, when you're running like this, your passing yards, they matter, but less so. So I think that passing needs to improve, but all in all, this is amazing on the ground. These numbers are incredible. When you average 5.8 and 7.3, your two primary running backs are averaging 5.8 and 7.3, and Bryce Underwood even averaged 5.2. He only had 5 carries, but when you're averaging those numbers, it's you're not going to lose many games. So Michigan got back to playing Michigan ball, so that's amazing. Good to see. It was fun to watch, and they were just hammering them on the ground. And a lot of that seemed to start as the game progressed. You could tell that Michigan State's defensive line was overmatched. They really were, and they showed up to play. Credit to them for being there. And towards the beginning of the game, they were showing some fight. But as the game progressed, it became very obvious that Michigan was winning in the trenches. And 276 rushing yards really reflects where the game was won. So, yeah, there, of course, you have Nick Marsh, Michigan State's primary receiver. He was respectable, to say the least. So, credit to him for showing up. Jack Valling had a couple good catches too, but all in all, Michigan's defense did play tough, didn't allow a ton of rush yards. They had, obviously some pass yards, so they showed up. Receiving, obviously, this is where Michigan needs to improve, but yeah, I mean, when you win with such a dominating ground game, how much can I complain about their pass yards? So, like I said, it's got to improve, but at the same time, we won, so you take the wins where you get them, I guess. Um, Defensively wise, uh, yeah, it was just a good game in general. Rolder showed out. Jimmy Rolder is becoming a star. Solo tackles. He had tackle, two tackles for loss. I believe he had, one sack for 12 yards. Ooh, yeah, he was all over the place. Just great, great game on his part. Yeah, no interceptions, solo tackles. Yeah, our linebackers are showing out more and more each game, so that's really good. They need to keep putting that pressure on because we're going to face like when we faced USC and they beat Michigan at their own game. It's because they did this but better. So we need to continue doing this if we are going to win more games. This is how our defense needs to play, and a lot of this you start going into the getting towards the end of the game, and they were absolutely victimizing Michigan State's offensive line. So whether that's a conditioning or strength thing, I don't know. Obviously, I'm not there to see, but they showed that this defensive line has stamina and the ability to continue doing this throughout the game, which is exactly what we need to do. So awesome. Like I said, towards the late of the game, they were absolutely victimizing Michigan State's offensive line. They were getting after Aiden Childs. So good on them for that. Forced fumble. Yeah, they were just showing out and they did a great job. I can't say this enough. Everybody contributed. It was just a really good all around game offensively. Well, minus the passing yards, but given how our rushing yards were, it didn't matter in the end. So thankfully, so all around, it was a decent game offensively and excellent game defensively. Like I said, that garbage time touchdown, not really worried about it, you know. So yeah, but one thing I noticed, and I'm sure you'll see it if you follow Michigan State and Michigan football at all, is if you follow this game in particular, was the lack of discipline um, on Michigan State's part. Now, that's not to say that I know that when you're in the scrum, people are saying things, certain things are said or done that may, cause problems. I get that. But just in general, from a viewer's perspective, Michigan State really showed a lack of discipline at certain points. Now, I'm not saying the refs are perfect, and I'm not gonna, go over that because that's a different story entirely. They certainly made some calls that I probably wouldn't have called, and whether they were for Michigan or against. But to be that as it may, Michigan State did show areas of just lack where they just seemed to lose control emotionally. It wasn't, there wasn't a ton of cheap shots. It wasn't. There was some pushing and shoving, and that's normal. To be fair, that's pretty normal. But there was just a lot of. They just seemed to towards the end of the game. They just seemed to lose focus, and that's when a lot, and especially assignment wise, when some of the runs Michigan was pulling off, they didn't bust any huge long runs. They had a few, decent runs. Let me see. I believe they had, yeah, they did have some, like Jordan Marshall had a long one. Just they did have those long ones, But there were times when it seemed like Michigan State almost lost focus. And what's that up to coaching? Don't know. I really don't. Jonathan Smith's tenure has not been great, and if there was a coach that's on the hot seat, outside of like Belichick and Sweeney and all those, this guy is probably it because yeah, Michigan State's struggling. So to be fair, they have talent. That's not to rag on them overly harshly. They're not as good a team as Michigan, and they are struggling. But the lack of discipline shows in this, when the stats come around and people see how many penalty yards you got. So that is the Michigan State game. Now we'll move on to the rest of the games from week 9. And actually, there's a couple of games that already played for week 10. I'll quick show you those, but it wasn't any games of consequence, at least in my opinion. Not fans of those teams. So. But yeah, Kennesaw State, FIU. Mind you, I don't remember who I called for every game, but probably did not call Kennesaw State winning this, but they did. I believe there's a popular guy, Bordeaux. I believe he was at that game. So yeah, I think he saw them lose. Um, I believe it was Vice Night for FIU. West Kentucky, Louisiana Tech. That was a close game. So kind of fun. And then you had the Make-A-Wish, Michigan, Delaware playing Middle Tennessee. They won. So hey, they got something in common with Michigan outside of the uniforms. Missouri State, New Mexico State. Missouri State, I believe this is their first year in at the FBS level. So hey, kudos to them for showing up. Rivalry game looks like South. No, I could be wrong, but South Alabama, Georgia State. I did see part of that game. Didn't watch it very long. No, not really that interesting. Now, I did call Virginia Tech over California, and I believe I said about Boise State would beat Nevada. However, this this Charlotte North Texas game, North Texas's quarterback set some kind of record, threw for like 600 yards. Absolutely absurd. So I watched for probably about half the game, and it was like almost like 24-20 or something at some point. I switched the channel. I don't remember what else I was watching, maybe another game or something. I come back and I see this score, and they're interviewing this kid because he threw for 600 yards. Absolutely absurd. Completely absurd. Like, it's crazy. I cannot imagine. Yeah, it was like 600 yards, 4 touchdowns, or something ridiculous. So kudos to him. That's a huge accomplishment, and good on him. Would not be surprised if North Texas is if they keep at least if they keep winning, they're going to be ranked easily. So that's really cool. Um, I did call Indiana over UCLA. That was total domination, virtually from the get go. Um, Texas A&M beating LSU, and if you've been following any kind of sports at all, you know that Brian Kelly's out at LSU, and I believe Frank Wilson has taken over. LSU also fired their offensive coordinator, Jeff Sloan, I think his name was. I could be wrong. But um, I see a lot of former or current Notre Dame fans uh, kind of poking fun at LSU because they're like, "We told you so." And I feel like when Brian Kelly went to LSU and he put on that fake, I believe it was fake Cajun accent or country accent or something like that, I think a lot of people at that time were like, "Yeah, you're not going to last." So, and well, in some ways they were right. So, um, LSU didn't look so hot. I mean, they, put up a bit of a fight towards most for probably about 2.5, 3 quarters, but they lost control definitely towards the end of the game. Completely just lost control. Defensively, they don't look the same. So yeah, Alabama, South Carolina was surprisingly a good game. Alabama did win. Pretty sure I called that, but South Carolina definitely put up a fight. I saw the score and I was wow, that was impressive. So uh, yeah, Oregon, Wisconsin, ugly game from Oregon. They can't afford to play like that against better teams. I don't know what's going on there. They won, so take that for what it is. But Wisconsin, is miserable this year, and when you're playing like that against a team that's miserable, it's not a good look and not a great way to keep your, you know, you'll stay ranked, but the committee's going to look at that and be like, ew, that's an ugly win. So, but, you know, people, good teams find ways to win. So take that, you know, with a bit of advice. Georgia Tech, Syracuse. I believe I said this before. I'm enjoying watching Georgia Tech this year. Man, they're playing really good ball. They beat Syracuse. They absolutely deserve to be ranked where they're at seventh. Ole Miss, Oklahoma. I had wanted Oklahoma to win this, honestly, but I also knew they were facing a very good Ole Miss team. Lane Kiffin has Ole Miss playing very well, so uh, kudos to them for beating Oklahoma. So yeah, that was a good game. Both sides played well. Just towards the end of the game, Ole Miss just took over, just completely took over. So you know, good on them for that. Miami, yeah, they beat the brakes off of Stanford, but I believe most of us kind of figured that was going to happen. So yeah, good on them for that. Vanderbilt, Missouri, good game. Would not surprise me if Diego Pavia is. I know that, how do you say it? Charisma doesn't win awards in college football, but if charisma could win awards, Diego Pavia might win the Heisman version of whatever that is. Fun to watch, great dude. Yeah, he's making Vanderbilt relevant in many ways. And the fact that Vanderbilt was ranked 10th 5 years ago, if you'd have told me that, I probably would have laughed at you. More than likely, probably would have cried laughing. Not a chance. But hey, awesome. Kudos to them for winning. Playing, you know, 10-17 is not a high scoring game, but, you know, winners find a way to win games. Very similar to Wisconsin, Oregon. You know, winners find a way to win. So kudos to them. That's awesome. BYU beat Iowa State. I had thought that for a while there. I thought Iowa State was going to do it, but hey, BYU pulled it out. Good on them. And I know for a fact I said that Texas Tech was going to beat Oklahoma State because everybody is beating Oklahoma State this year. They are in misery. So Texas Tech will get back to their winning ways after a setback last week. Virginia, North Carolina, Virginia. Whew. North Carolina is, while maybe underachieving, do not underachieve the underachievers, please. Win your games you're supposed to win. Yeah. Virginia won, but that was close. Tennessee beat up on Kentucky, but Kentucky still put up 34 points. That's not bad at all. You know, that's a solid game, but you're not going to win many games giving up 56 points. Just the reality of it. Memphis beat South Florida. Memphis had their own set let down, I think, a week or two ago, and they came back and, you know, proved it against South Florida. I thought South Florida was going to win. I really did. But hey, kudos to Memphis for coming back and pulling it out. Louisville beating up on Boston College. I'm pretty sure I called that. Boston College is not doing so hot this year. I mean, when you lose to Michigan State, this version of Michigan State, you're probably not doing so hot. So Boston College was going to have to figure something out. But Baylor, Cincinnati beat up on Baylor. I thought that was going to be closer, but Cincinnati was the better team. I did watch part of that. Texas, Mississippi State. Texas, what's going on? Are you good or are you not good? Consistency, man. That's all people want. I know Texas fans pulling their hair out because they don't know if Archie Manning is any good or any bad. Now, mind you, I believe that was an overtime game, and his backup came in and played well enough to win. That's what you want. Perfect. That's fine. Your backup. But Texas, what is going on? Nobody knows how good you are because nobody knows how bad you are. So Sarkisian, I'm sure he's probably just as frustrated as any of his fans are. Trying to figure out what's going on there. So, but they did get the win. So hey, that's a W on the score sheet. Washington beat up in Illinois. Man, that was the Washington that I thought was going to show up against Michigan. I thought it was going to be. So apparently they showed that the Michigan game was not a character. You know, they lost to Michigan, but they showed that was not indicative of how they could, the level which they're capable of playing. and they beat Illinois solidly. Uh, yeah, Illinois has kind of fallen after that loss to Indiana a couple weeks ago. They, yeah, they just haven't been the same. So, yep, there it is. That's the Washington that we thought was going to show up to Michigan, did not, and they took, but they came back and they came back big time. So kudos to them. Houston beating Arizona State. I don't know. I thought Arizona State was going to be so much better this year. Don't know what's going on there. So, kudos to Houston for showing up, but man, Arizona State's just disappointing this year, unfortunately. Already covered the Michigan game. Nebraska at Northwestern. Another one of those like Texas kind of situations where how good are they? Is Dominic Rail any good, or is the hype all you know? So who knows? Northwestern's not a good team, but they're scrappy. Like they are scrappy. So kudos to Nebraska for beating a scrappy team, but how good is Nebraska? Nobody can tell. So it's kind of interesting to watch. Kansas State, Kansas. I believe I said Kansas State would win, but yeah, they definitely. Kansas is kind of hurting again for kind of going back to their old ways. Unfortunately, it was good when they were doing better, but it is what it is. Kent State, Bowling Green, Battle of the Bad. Wow, Kent State won. Was not expecting that, but hey, Bowling Green should be more embarrassed. But hey, Kent State, obviously wanted it just 3 points more. Ohio, Eastern Michigan, all right. Yeah, some action going on there. I'll show it out. Rutgers and Purdue, battle of the bad in the Big Ten. Rutgers is just a little less bad. Wake Forest, SMU. I thought SMU was going to beat Wake Forest, and I was wrong, but it was a very close game. I believe that Wake Forest won on a last second field goal, if I'm correct. If I'm correct, that's the one that just barely went over the crossbar. But hey, field goal is a field goal, so they won that. App State Old Dominion, definitely thought App State was going to win this, so they got some work to do. It's a long far cry from that was it 2008 or whatever team that beat Michigan. Yeah, definitely not the same program. Auburn, Arkansas, they just spent basically most of the game just smacking each other around, and yeah, Auburn just had one or two punches more than Arkansas did. So Akron, Buffalo. I thought Buffalo was going to win. I don't know if you've noticed, I have very little faith in Ohio teams. I can't imagine why. But yeah, Akron did win that. Um, New Mexico beat Utah State. Kudos to New Mexico. It's the more they win, the better Michigan's win against them looks. Rice, UConn, surprisingly high scoring game, but good for them. Good on Rice. I believe one of the McCaffrey boys went to Rice, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong now. Navy, yeah, good for the Service Academy, beating Florida Atlantic. Temple beating Tulsa. That was a close game. I did not see the score until literally just right now. That's a good game. Washington State beating Toledo. Washington State finally gets a win after playing all these, playing these Ole Miss and all that. They finally get a win. So good on them for beating. Mind you, they didn't exactly play the highest quality team, but they won. Northern Illinois, Ball State. I think I had Ball State winning this, but oh well. San Diego State, Fresno State. Yeah, Fresno State clearly could do absolutely nothing all game. Iowa beat Minnesota 41-3. Where was this offense for like the past, I don't know, 20 years? Iowa's, yeah, so good on Iowa, but man, I'm not used to seeing those numbers 41 next to Iowa. This last couple of years, they haven't been able to do anything offensively, but hey, kudos to them. Well done. Miami of Ohio beat Western Michigan. Boo. Whatever. They'll be all right. Pittsburgh did beat North Carolina State. I'm not sure where I called this one, but hey, Pittsburgh is starting to, they did beat, or they won their last couple of games. I know they started. I believe I got them wrong. I believe when they played Florida State, I got that game wrong, and ever since then they've basically been winning. So Hey, you never know. Massachusetts, awful team. No, not surprising. Central Michigan beat them. Southern Miss beat ULM. Yeah, I believe I called that. TCU, West Virginia. That was a slugfest that TCU should have won by more, but they didn't. Raging Cajuns and Troy. Good on Troy for winning. Congrats to them for winning that. Arkansas State, Georgia. I know I called Arkansas State mostly because I like their logo more. That's it. Totally arbitrary. Wyoming beat Colorado State, and Colorado State's in a lot of trouble right now. I believe I think I said in the last video too that their starting quarterback has transferred, or talk about transferring, and I know that can really have a negative effect on the program. So, Utah absolutely beat the brakes off of Colorado. Absolutely smoked them. Not sure what's going on with Deion Sanders, but you cannot continue to play like this. You cannot continue to coach and have your team play like this and expect to maintain your job. Colorado last year was starting to show progress. So I know that I've seen enough talk on the internet and everything when they see people see games like this and ask, was it the players that made you good or the coaching? And then they see this and they feel like they have an answer. So you cannot continue to lose games by 40 whatever points, 46, 47 points, and expect to maintain your job, your reputation, especially when you brought in a whole bunch of high profile names to be, coach your team, be coaches on your team or coordinators. You just can't. That's just not going to work. And that applies. It just happened to LSU with Brian Kelly. If Michigan was having the same problems, they would absolutely, there'd be talk about who's getting fired. So I think that Colorado has to do some soul searching, and Deion Sanders really has to take a look at how he's building that program. Can they turn it around? Absolutely. I know Joel Klatt. I know he's a big Colorado fan.
So yeah, if Deion continues to lose like this, don't be surprised if his name is being tossed about as possibly being on a chopping block. So, uh, yeah, that was already I already went over that. Boise State, Nevada. Yeah. All right. Week 10 already started, technically speaking. Today, Kennesaw State beat UTEP. I'm not sure what that says about Kennesaw State or how bad UTEP is. I really don't. UTEP Stadium is poverty level. I've been there once, so not great. James Madison and Texas State uh, don't really follow either team, so congrats James Madison for winning. And then these teams will play tomorrow, but I will do my predictions for the rest of this week tomorrow or the day after. We'll see. So thanks for everything. If you like what's going on with the channel, leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that other good stuff, and have a great day. Peace.